All right, can you guys hear me? I just got this new mic. It's pretty sweet. I think I sound better than I normally do on my little like blue snowball, but this bad boy seems pretty good, honestly. Let's see. Static, go ahead, buddy. You're unmuted.
Oh, your mic sounds awesome.
Oh, does it? Does
Clear.
it sound way
It's
better?
very, very clear. Oh yeah,
Nice.
100
I'm
times
glad,
better.
dude. I think this is going to take it to a whole new level, honestly. I'm very excited. I think this will be really sweet.
So what's up, man? I haven't you haven't been active a lot. What's going on? How's everything?
Everything's pretty good. I've been doing a lot of like TikToks and stuff like that, and life's been pretty busy. I think it's been kind of hard to figure out me and Spex's schedule and stuff like that. Just because like my sister's going off to school and stuff like that. So we gotta plan
There's
for
that.
that. I'm going back to college, so
Ooh, that's gonna be tough.
yeah, it'll be good though, man. I'm excited. I mean, I think, I'm really excited to see, honestly, where the podcast will go and stuff like that. And I think I'm honestly going to start because I have the equipment now. I'm going to start doing like streams of my own and stuff like that too, which will be pretty sweet.
Epic. Let's go. Let's go.
Yes, sir.
What was I? I was gonna say something. Damn it. I'm not gonna lie. I've been kind of lacking on my rosary thing, my rosaries, because I've been dealing with a lot of shit going on now. But I'm trying to get that on track again. It's just been very inconsistent. I have a problem of consistency. I've always had that problem growing up. But now I have to start being consistently praying the rosary.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, you kind of get into a whole situation where like, consistency is the main thing. And it can be tough. I mean, I suck at consistency. I suck at time planning and stuff like that. So, anytime I can try and be consistent, I try my best to.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, I don't think I ever asked you, what's your take on Laura Loomer? Because I think you already know my take on her. I was never a fan of her.
Um, that's kind of tough. I think that I don't honestly know too much about her. You know what I mean? And I'm trying to be sort of less judgmental in general. So I'd have to investigate more from her. I mean, honestly, if Nick likes her, like, I think that's kind of good enough for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she lost today, which I'm not surprised because, Florida voters aren't really bright. No offense to them. They're not very bright.
Well, you get a lot of boomers and stuff like that that aren't really like plugged into the truth and that sort of thing, and just kind of vote for the same generic neocons without really changing it up a whole lot. You know what I mean?
Yep, that is the sad, sad truth. All my friends that used to be like big Ukraine shields are finally not for Ukraine anymore. They're like, oh man, you were right. They really are not the good guys here. And it's like, yeah, I tried telling you that, but you didn't listen to me.
You didn't listen, and now look where you're at.
Yeah,
You
now
know?
nobody talks about the war anymore. Like literally nobody talks about it. It's funny.
No one talks about it, no one cares about it. I mean, they always find some new issue to like care about or put their focus on and stuff like that when the old one is like out, you know?
Yep. Chat Life AF. Unmute him. He's new.
Well, only if he raises his hand. I mean, if he raises his hand, I'll
Yes.
mute him, or I'll unmute him. Excuse me. Sorry.
I've been keeping away from like the church, how do you call it, church politics and like all that stuff. And honestly, it's been better for my mind. I've been kind of staying away from that because it's kind of not good for me, even though I still, look into it, but I'm not going to let it over consume me because that just leads you to black pill. And that's not a healthy way of living. I think we all know that.
Well, it's not a healthy way of living, and the other thing is too, man. Like you gotta just really, really view church history in light of everything. I mean, I keep saying this about our brothers in Christ. We have a way too rosy of a view of church history, honestly. I mean, it's way too like positive. And ironically, that kind of is a negative because what it does is it leads to us having a false like romanticism about everything and not
Hmm.
understanding that like there were times in church history where literally people thought like the church was over. I mean, Saint Basil the Great has like a quote about how like towards the end of his life, like the Eastern Catholic churches weren't getting any better, right? Like they were really, really, really succumbing to the heresy of his day, which I don't know if it was Arianism. I think it was a different heresy, maybe monothelitism, but like, he literally thought that everything was ending, and like wrote these like long, like sad sort of diaries about it and stuff like that. And look, everything didn't end. um the other thing is too, we're very addicted to black pills in this culture. I mean, for every like bad church piece of church news you hear, there's probably 500 baptisms happening and 500 marriages that are going to go on to be successful and raise faithful Catholic kids. And a new bishop is consecrated in some foreign country that's super faithful and stuff like that. Like bad news sells, and so that's why people focus on it in the media. And it's really not good. I mean, I almost wish that there was a like a Catholic news company that could focus on like the positive things going on in the church, because I think it would really help balance out like
The bad
the
news.
the stratosphere. And the problem is, what also happens is you have a lot of heretics and schismatics that like take up the bad news and say, oh, well, this is why the church isn't true. And it's like, do you guys even understand like church history? Like
None of them do.
we've
No,
dealt with things that are like far worse than even what we're
no,
going through. You
none
know
of
what I
them do.
mean?
Like people like Destiny and Hunter Avalon and all these atheists, they have never wrote. I'll bet you if you name them all these saints that you were saying today, right now, they will be like, "Who's that? I've never heard of them," because they don't bother.
They don't care.
They think Christianity is American evangelicalism. That's what they think Christianity is,
Well,
for
it's
the
the whole
most part.
sky. It's the whole Sky Daddy thing. It's the whole like. By the way, Mike and Axnay, if you guys want to talk, just raise your hand and I'll unmute you. But it's the whole Sky Daddy. If God real, why bad thing? Why mean thing happen? Kind of BS, and it
Yeah.
doesn't. It's not contingent on any sort of actual argument. It's just sort of like, well, this person is like not having a good time or something like that, so therefore like God must not be real. And really at the root of all that, like when you really examine those criticisms, um it's pride, right? Like Hunter Avalon said, like, oh, God sends me to hell, then he's unjust. And I'm like, no, it's you who are unjust, right? Like God has died on the cross for your sins. God has given up his only begotten son, so that you could be joined in the unity of heaven forever and ever with him. And you turn right back around and like thumb your nose at our Lord and say, oh, well, you're not just because you're not, giving me pornography and weed and stuff like that and letting me give into my hedonism,
Oh,
right?
Hunter said he grew up Christian in quotes, meaning he grew up very Protestant. So I'm like, okay,
He,
that's why.
he grew up probably in some really bad Protestant community, or
Yeah,
not necessarily bad like they were bad people, but like bad as in I'm not gonna lie, there you get some really, really, really good like Protestant apologists for like the existence of God and stuff like that, like William Lane Craig or like Lee Strobel or something. But like for the most part, like the reason that atheists go for either generally Eastern Orthodoxy or Catholicism is because they're the most historically tenable and stuff like that. And I mean, I would even say like, the few atheists that go to EO, they're more just infatuated, I think, with the spirituality of the church fathers really than anything that's actually going on in Eastern
well,
Orthodoxy. You
well,
know what I
Pinesap,
mean?
before you continue, Mike Fan is raising his hand.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I'm gonna just mute you real quick, and then you can get unmuted in a minute.
Okay.
Yo, what's up, bro?
Yo, sorry, you just caught me punching out of work. Yeah, I was gonna say like that's interesting that you say that because I noticed there's a very real pipeline from like Protestantism to atheism because like I have a coworker and he said he's an ex-Christian. He sorry, hold on, let me put my mouth closer to my mic. He said he's an ex-Christian and that like I talked to him about. I'm like, what do you mean by that? And then he was saying like he's not an atheist, but it's like he went to for background he went to a United Church, which is very like which is very uh bad. It's heretical. They're, I believe, perennialists. Also, they fall under that heresy. But anyway, it was like I was talking to him about it, and I'm like, because he's not necessarily an atheist. He's like, because I said to him, don't be like falling into that trap, that pitfall of thinking because you've had a bad experience and you weren't practicing in your religion that somehow the answers of everything, and then you can just like disprove God or whatever. And he's like, no, I don't necessarily, like, I'm not an atheist or whatever. I believe that there's possibility of creator or whatever, but like he's not really into like organized religion in a way, I guess. And that also can really like throw someone off if they're like at a United Church, because it's like, you know, especially with that, since it's kind of like the worst form um of well, not even Christianity, it's more so like of deism, really. I just call it deism because there's no compelling to like, come to church. You don't have an obligation there. You go whenever you think of it on Sundays, and it's like they make a mockery of like the traditions that have been, of Christianity that have been, founded, 2,000 years ago. And it's like, it's ridiculous. And it's like, I notice it because these people are very just like nominally Christian. There's no magisterium to hold people to account, to hold people to, coming to church, having the, hearing the good word, basing your life around that. It's kind of just like, it's kind of like a suggestion. They don't have the pain of, like, they might say, if you ask a Protestant, oh, well, like what happens if you, like, can I not go to church on certain Sundays? Some of them, they'll say different things. Some of them will say, oh, well, that's not a good idea. You should go to church every Sunday. Some of them will be like, don't worry about it. Like, if you don't, if you like, you don't feel like getting up, and going to, either the Protestant church or whatever denomination. It's like, because, a lot of them, they treat their, services like rock bands, and rock bands and concerts. And it's like, it's, it's really sad to see because there's nothing holding them to account, nothing holding it all together. There's nothing, like it's very loose. It's very do whatever. It's really just disappointing. And, it's like, and I'm trying to get him to, I'm trying to get my coworker to like, not fall into those things just because, I imagine he was not a, practice, like what's it called, a regular practitioner. It's kind of just like whenever, or like, it wasn't of any substance. United churches, because I don't know if that's a phenomenon in the United States, but like United churches are just really like, they're awful heretics. And I could ask you to pray for my coworker.
I gladly will. There's a lot of, I got to start writing out a list. There's a lot of people that I got to pray for. I always feel like I don't get to everybody. But I want to keep everybody in my heart the best I can. Mike, it's very interesting because I've said this once and I'll say this again. Like, everyone always says, like, you hear sometimes like people say like, well, Thomism leads to atheism, which I've never seen that. In fact, I've seen like the opposite happen, where Thomism has led people to Christ every single time. Like, I've never seen a case where Thomism led someone to atheism. But it's very interesting because in Catholic presuppositionalism, one of the best arguments, I think, for the church is that if an atheist was to look and say, if Christianity is real, why are there so many divisions? And he sees Protestantism, Eastern Orthodoxy, all these collected, well, churches aren't even churches, they're ecclesial communities, right? So he sees all these ecclesial communities, and then he sees all these like federations of churches, right? Like loosely organized, and they don't really talk to each other, and there's not like a clear jurisdiction. And he says to himself, like, well, clearly that's not like the church. You know, if I'm going to believe in Christ and I'm going to believe that Christ founded a church, Christ would found a church that was visible, one, and I didn't have to play looky-loo guessing games to figure out how to be in it, right? Catholic ecclesiology in that sense is very simple. You're not as to guessing whether you're in the body of Christ or not. If you've been baptized and confirmed in the church, and you're not an unrepentant heretic or anything like that, you know, and to be that, you have to knowingly know that you were holding an error too. It can be like, you know, just material heresy or something like that. Like you were saying something erroneous without truly knowing it. You would know that you were safe in the ark, right? That you were safe in the ark. And that assurance almost pairs with the false assurance that atheists have that, you know, our Lord isn't real, right? Any other church or ecclesial community, that's not the case, because if you look at it from like a historical standpoint, it's like every single one had a certain jump off point, or has to do their apologetics in such a way that they're like, here's the top 10 reasons why I'm not Catholic, right? Because the claims of Catholicism are so true that you have to set yourself up as a contrarian to try and rebuke it, right? And so people will get off on like technicalities and stuff like that, even though there are all these clear and visible elements that even a low IQ person who's never going to do apologetics in their life, which by the way, not doing apologetics doesn't make you low IQ. That's not what I'm saying. But like, you know, like the blue collar worker or something like that, right? Who just isn't interested in that stuff and is looking and seeing which church clearly seems more united. It's the Catholic Church, right? It's not the various, you know, unorganized, disorganized churches of Eastern Orthodoxy that, relatively speaking, hate each other and don't talk to each other. It's not, you know, the various Protestant denominations that seemingly at both times either claim, no, every other church is false except mine, or, oh, it doesn't matter what church you go to, we're all Christian. So they either err on this like brutal sectarianism that you have to like play like, you know, connect the dots throughout history to try and make work, or they trend towards this sort of universalism where it's like, well, it doesn't really matter like what you are, right? And so, you know, the atheist says in their head, like, well, either you can't back up the existence of your church historically, or you can't, or you're so indifferent about it that it's like, this is clearly not the truth. Because if I'm going to be about the truth, I'm not going to be indifferent about it, you know? So it really comes down to that. And when you look at it, this is what William G. Ward posited as his conclusion for why he converted, because he said, really, at the end of the day, there are two forces in this world. It's Catholicism and atheism. There's like everything else is just a distraction, is just a fairy tale. You know what I mean? And the more and more I do apologetics, and the more and more I like look at it and like look at like the grand scale of everything, I would say that he's more than right. Like just hands down. Also, if anyone else wants to talk, you can raise your hand and I'll let you in here.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, super heavy. What's going on, bro?
I was just gonna share my experience with going to a non-denominational church with my buddy 2 weekends ago. He told me that, like, first of all, they just did like Rock Band for the first 45 minutes. It was just this really long song where they were literally like, Jesus makes me feel so good. Jesus is beautiful. And then a girl came up and explained for another hour how Jesus died for beauty. And then that was pretty much it. And I was talking to him, and he's like, yeah, it's really nice to get back here. We took a break for like 2 months, So we didn't have mass for like 2 months. We were a lot of people were going on vacations, and it's a very different world out there, man. It's so different.
I mean, it's just crazy, dude, because like that's the other thing too, is just it's so like there's an element of beauty and aesthetic to looking at where the truth is. You know, it's not the whole truth, right? I mean, you know, you could point to any even false religion in the world and say, oh, well, those Tibetan monks are doing cool chants and they've got gold, you know, frills and they're wearing the robes or whatever. You know, it's not everything, but there is an aesthetical quality to beauty that makes someone say that's true, right? And when, you know, you treat your church like it's like a rock band experience or something like that, no one is looking at that thinking like, yeah, if I'm going to devote my life to following God, here's where it's at. Everyone looks at that and says, you know, this ain't the truth, like whatsoever. I've been misled, you know?
It was really interesting. I'm getting coffee with him tomorrow morning. He's been a friend of mine for like 3 years now, and I've just been really gentle with him because I realized I got to a certain point where I could probably just destroy him with apologetics, and I don't want to do that. I want it to come up gently and naturally. I don't want to scare him away, but he said some things that were a little condescending of Catholicism, so it's definitely opened the door for me to talk about it. And getting coffee with him in the morning, I'm excited to see how it goes.
That'll be awesome, dude. And yeah, I mean, it comes down to what does Venerable Fulton Sheen tell all of us and remind all of us? You know, you might win the debate, but you might lose the soul. So if you're kind to him, dude, I think you got a good winner plan. You know, and when he asks something, of course, you know, you can give him an answer. But, you know, I was having a conversation with someone today, and I think it was Franco Aurelio. And I told him, like, you know, Spexo gave me this really good advice that I definitely think was from the Holy Spirit speaking through him, where he told me, he's like, you know, you don't need to get mad when someone necessarily like is obstinate in their denial of the faith, because he says, like, you know, at the end of the day, you have the truth, right? Like, you don't need to prove it to yourself, and you don't even apologetics isn't about proving it to the other person. You know, that St. Thomas Aquinas quote that I sent the other day, St. Thomas says it's just about defending the faith. Because when you try to prove stuff, what it does is it kind of undermines the mystery and the personal element of like our walk with Christ, that it's like, it just kind of undermines that element. You almost become more like a car salesman than you do like St. Athanasius or like St. Nicholas or something like that. You know what I mean?
Totally. And dude, nice mic setup. That is sweet. I'm just now noticing that.
Yeah, man, I needed to get a new mic because the Blue Snowball was not sounding too good.
Awesome.
Right on. Super heavy, if you want to talk again, that's totally fine. I'm gonna let Illinois Zoomer in because he's been so patient. What's up, bro? How's it going?
Yo, what's good? Pinesap, bro. First of all, man.
How's it going, dude?
It's going really well, man. First of all, man, just want to say God bless you, bro, for you know, keeping the faith alive, man. You just have such a perfectly nuanced take. I mean, I just see, you know, plenty of non-Catholics and plenty of Catholics that are like, oh, you know, like kind of like tolerating like the SSPX and stuff, but like you just have like the best takes, bro. And I just want to thank you for defending the faith. But by the way, I just want to maybe throw in a quick thing, because having some reservations about like Catholicism, not really Catholicism, but it's more like this, like the concept of the papacy. Like obviously the papacy now, like we had a Polish pope, we had a German pope, Argentinian pope. It's more it's more Catholic now. It's more, you know, getting all the different flavors. But like before, it was like, you know, it was just basically like Italian after Italian after Italian. So can you maybe like walk through? I don't know how much of the history you know, but can you maybe walk through like how the papacy was sort of like influenced by like the region and by politics, and just kind of work your way through that if you can. I don't mean to pressure you though. So I have to take
No, dude, that's totally fine. And I'll try my best. I mean, like I said, I'm just getting into really reading the early church fathers and stuff like that. As I always say, like, I'm sure that there's some non-Catholics, like if we had a debate, they would be able to school me on like this obscure thing that this church father said or something. But like, yeah, I'll totally kind of go into it. I mean, really the thing is like in the early church, the papacy was a lot more, I hate to use kind of a liberal term, but like diverse, so like, you had an African pope who likely was either maybe kind of light-skinned African, maybe possibly black, I don't know. You had, or actually I think you had several African popes, if I'm not mistaken, in the very early church. You had actually the Byzantine papacy that lasted for, I think, roughly 200 years to 100 years. And what I always find super funny about the Byzantine papacy is actually of like the early church, that papacy has some of the strongest claims about papal supremacy and papal infallibility of like all the popes, right? So it's like Pope St. Agatho and stuff like that at like the Sixth Ecumenical Council, like saying how like the Apostolic See is never erred, from the path of the true faith and stuff like that, and will remain undefiled to the end. And I'm like, that's literally just like Vatican I, like right there. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, it's funny because it's like a reflection of like, that wasn't lost in the Eastern perspective. Right. And you also see, and I'm trying to always remember the ethnography of like the popes. We had one, I always mess with Spexo about this. We had one English pope, and I think it was Hadrian IV, maybe. I think it was Hadrian IV, or Adrian IV. It was either Adrian or Hadrian, but the fourth. And I always mess with Spexo and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, you got to accept that Hadrian was pope. And he's like, I'm basically an Anglo-vacantist, dude. He just won't accept when an Anglo is pope. He becomes a sede suddenly, No, but that's just all games. But yeah, in regards to, most of Italy being popes, the thing is that I find it's not an issue by and large, because think about the Old Testament, right? God is just with whoever keeps the faith. So it doesn't necessarily matter what group it is, just so long as they're keeping the faith alive in their hearts. In the Old Testament, of course, we know that it was the Israelites, it was the Jews who kept the true faith. All the other people of the world forgot God, even though that they were created by him and stuff like that. And so, that didn't invalidate the fact that God made all those other people in his image, and that he even wanted them to be Jewish, hence why he made, the church, so that they really would become Jewish and a part of the new Israel, as we're, as Catholics, the new Jews, right? And so in a similar way, just because it happened to end up that there were a lot of Italians as popes, it's not so much like who's pope, but what are they saying and what are they doing, right? What is it that they're giving witness to? And, the fact is that the universality of the church, even in those Italian popes, was really reflected. They, their Italian origin, while maybe influencing who they were as maybe just, personal men like you or I, they always kept the heart of the universal church at mind. So they would write to Great Britain. They would write to the East. They would write to the West. They would write to the Western colonies. And really what you see is, despite having a certain origin, they take on this universal fatherhood, much like our Lord, right? Because, for instance, someone could say, well, why was the Lord specifically, a Galilean, right? Why was he from Galilee, right? If Jesus was, meant to die in the flesh of all men, wouldn't have Jesus been like a bunch of different races or something like that? And, your answer is that, well, there is an element of, yes, his flesh was in the flesh of a Galilean Jew, but he came to die for all men. And so in that way, because all men are a part of the one human family, the one human race, him giving up of himself for all of us and being God means that he died for all men, not just some, right? And so in the similar way, our Holy Father modeling our Lord and in his piety and stuff like that, even if he might come from, say, predominantly an Italian origin, he in a similar way, being the Lord's vicar, models our Lord in saying, wherever I'm from, I'm for this universal church, and I'm giving my service to this universal church. Does that kind of make sense?
Yep, that was a great answer.
Awesome.
Yeah,
let's go, dude.
Let's go.
And if you want to ask something else, totally feel free. I'm gonna unclick Dan because he's been waiting so patiently. But yeah, dude, I was happy to answer your question, man.
Dude, thank you so much for answering it. I just have one comment. It was just Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. I was like, I didn't really know before his feast day. I was like, oh, I don't even know this guy is. Just some like random saint. But dude, this guy's really good, man. It's just like
he's a Chad.
So many things just waiting to be discovered. Like this guy was like huge father monasticism, and like I was just listening to his 12 Degrees of Humility and Pride. That was really good, man. It's you can find it on Spotify. It's only like an hour, so I think that's awesome. Worth a listen. So yeah, that's just the one comment I want to throw in. So yeah, keep it good work, brother. God bless.
God bless you, brother. All right. So I'm just gonna mute you, big guy. Oh, you already muted. Dan P. What's up, Dan? You're unmuted, big guy. If you want to unmute your mic and ask anything.
Gang. What's up, guys?
What's up, dude?
Pinesap. It's really fun to connect with you, man. Really excited and encouraged by your work. I'm wondering, what have you found in terms of concrete sources for the lay of the land or the ecosystem of the episcopacy in under the reign of St. Peter, given that a lot of historical critical scholars will point to St. James as sort of the head honcho of Jerusalem? So
gotcha.
You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Was St. James Pope, or what's going on? Or, do we have an oligarchy here versus a papacy, right? Why is St. James such a big deal from a historical critical point of view? And how do we respond to that?
Yeah, so, I'm trying to go more into the historical critical elements, so I don't want to act like I know everything yet. I'm very young into apologetics, so I never want to give the impression that I know everything. But kind of off the top of my head, there's a great Catholic Answers article written by Carlo Bassard that talks about, at least in the book of Acts, why Peter was the one who ultimately led the Council of Jerusalem and not James. There's this kind of something that I noticed that our well, I don't want to call Protestants our spiritual enemies, but Protestantism is a spiritual enemy because it's a false, it's a false heresy, right? That heresy, what's very funny, or any schism or what have you, they always seem to build up this straw man of the papacy, right? Unless Peter is an autocrat and he speaks at all times and no other bishops say anything ever, and he speaks from a mountain on high as if he's God himself or something, then papacy debunked. And that's so ridiculous. I mean, because and I actually have a good retort. For them to say that, or to say that oh well, another bishop did something and that invalidated Peter's episcopate, would almost be equivalent to when an atheist argues well, because in the Gospels not every person accepted that Jesus was the Son of God, then he's not, right? That's such a ridiculous argument, and if you follow that line of thought, it's arguing with a new atheist. So I noticed that about kind of their thought process. And now in regards to the Council of Jerusalem, what's interesting is like the speech that James gives is pastoral, right? He's contributing to the council. And if you see how ecumenical councils have always gone throughout history, this has been the normal delineative process of every single ecumenical council. I mean, even up to as recently as Vatican II, like St. Paul VI wanted to issue a very specific like sentence about like the Peter's role in the church, the Pope's role in the church. And I remember it was like Henri de Lubac or something like spoke up and he said, Holy Father, what about this? And he was like, oh yeah, you're right. And like changed the sentence and kind of rewrote it a little bit. So it's like merely like one of the other apostles speaking up and being like, oh, hey, Peter, what about this? Or, contributing to the whole consensus of the ecumenical council is in no way undermining the papal claim. We don't even make that as, oh, what's up?
Yeah, no, I think I'm tracking with you. I've been thinking about the similar themes that, words we hear even now of collegiality and synodality and respect for St. James' diocese, so to speak. St. Peter can be in the diocese and still like kind of give St. James the mic, if you will.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting too, because it's one of those things where, that's how the church actually, not even just the early church, but the church has always acted, right? Like, there's this illusion that like, for instance, like in the Catholic ecclesiology that like we somehow reject the pentarchial structure, that like all 5 patriarchs historically aren't important, but they are. And it's a very great tragedy that those other patriarchs fell away. But the thing is that they weren't the king on the chessboard, right? The king on the chessboard. Now, I'm not saying that the Pope is king like Christ is king. There's only one king, right? But if we look at the ecclesiology of the church, it's all centered around being in communion with Peter, because to be in communion with Peter follows to be in communion with Christ, right? But that being said, it doesn't downplay actually the rights, privileges, or even the responsibilities of other bishops and patriarchs in church history. Quite the opposite. In fact, the communion that they share together, the communio, I think I'm using that term right, communio, of love, as St. Ignatius says of the Roman Church, that see presiding in love, right, is exactly how the papal prerogatives have always worked. And even Bishop Gasser in Vatican I says this in his Relationes of Pastor Eternus, where he was like, it's not that the other bishops aren't important. It's not that the other bishops don't contribute to the life of the church. In fact, when Peter binds or loosens something, he's not binding and loosing, he's not an oracle from on high binding and loosing whatever just pops into his own head. He actually gets the consensus of the church, through ecumenical councils, synods, consulting theologians, what have you, and then binds it to the church. And we see this all throughout the history of the church from early to later, where Peter takes the consensus from the church, from all the bishops, the patriarchs, what have you, and binds that to the church, and that communion becomes the Eucharistic communion that we all share in as Catholics. But in regards to going back to James, I kind of got off track there. It's very interesting because James is the Bishop of Jerusalem, right? As far as I remember, if my historiography is right, and despite that, and despite even Jerusalem being, as I think quoted by St. Augustine, the mother of all churches, because the church literally started in Jerusalem, right? It was like the first see established. It was not the first see established in the pentarchial structure, meaning not first in terms of dating, but first in terms of order, in order of how those sees were meant to be ordered, right? And you see this in the fact that, so the Church of Jerusalem is established, Peter goes to Antioch, and I think he presides there for, 10 or 20 years. I'm really rusty on how long. And then he goes, of course, over to Rome with St. Paul, and both are martyred there, right? Sealing the church in their blood. But soon after, what we see in the very earliest testimony of the church is Saint Clement of Rome being actually referred to in the New Testament. I think it's either in letter to the Philippians or Acts, but he's referred to in the scriptures. He's writing to the church at Corinth, right? And he's writing with this pastoral fatherly role of kind of the monoepiscopacy that is Rome. And it's very interesting because a lot of historians cite the fact that there were sees that were closer to Corinth that were already established than even Rome. So why are the Corinthians trying to delineate or solve an issue all the way over in Rome? That doesn't make any sense, right? And so the natural conclusion is Saint Clement from the very early, from the very earliest evidence is acting as a spiritual father to the entire church, and as the Gospels say, of Peter confirming his brethren. That being said, I haven't studied like the really deep, this scholarly research from Cambridge or Oxford or something, but I hope that helped, Dan. Did it help?
I think that's really great, especially what you mentioned about Clement in Corinth. And something that came to mind as we were talking about James kind of relatedly is like, look, so what if the historical records attest to St. James being like a really respected guy in Jerusalem, like by Jews and such, having a good reputation with Jews in Jerusalem, even for loving the poor and all these good things, does not a pope make, does not even a bishop make. He could just be a really cool guy. It doesn't speak to his authority or not from the Lord himself. Like that's a closed door conversation with Christ that, the Jews' opinion just doesn't matter. It's great that the Jews liked him and he was so noble and like cared for the poor, but that it's kind of irrelevant from like an authoritative perspective.
Well, and it also shows that you need to read these documents with a discerning ear. I am very blown away at how honestly kind of dumb like a lot of like Protestants and Eastern Orthodox are when they come to reading early church writings. And like, I'm sorry, I know that sounds arrogant, but like a lot of them literally will like read them and be like, oh, well, the papacy isn't true because this other bishop is referred to as having an unbreakable faith, or like Saint Justinian is referred to as the gates of hell haven't prevailed against his faith or whatever. And I'm like, do you understand how biblical typology works? It's a yes and. Like, they're not like nowhere in there is it affirming that like Saint Justinian the First as Emperor of Byzantium had, a lineage of emperors that would always have an unbreakable faith and the gates of hell wouldn't prevail against them. The way that scriptural exegesis goes is you can commend someone's faith and you can commend someone for having even an unbreakable faith as a sole person. And that's not like a dunking on the papacy. There's nothing in scripture or any church tradition that says like, no, only Peter has to be referred to as the one with unbreakable faith. I mean, I even had a Protestant guy, we were talking back and forth about St. Gregory of Nyssa giving a really good witness to Peter's primacy. And his rebuttal against me was that earlier in the scriptural commentary, I think St. Gregory of Nyssa refers to Paul and James as pillars. And I'm like, okay, but then he goes on this whole rant about Peter and specifically referring to, he was a lowly fisherman and raised in the rock of the church. And he's like, yeah, but they refer to the others as pillars. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. It's like, yeah, all the apostles were pillars, right? All were very faithful to Christ and stuff like that. It doesn't delineate into like, oh, guys, pack it up. Someone else was called a pillar except Peter, Catholicism debunked. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. And again, it's kind of the false framing that I think people fall into. Other people can be said to have an unbreakable faith or a strong faith or be a rock even, right, in their faith. And it doesn't, you have to read what the text is actually saying. Is it assigning like a certain ministry to them? Is it assigning it to like their episcopate? Is it enduring, what have you? And when you do that, you properly make the nuance and distinction of, no, clearly Peter and the popes have been singled out in having this specific role, even if there's been other bishops or whatever that have been referred to as having at one point or another, not like enduring in their episcopate, but like that specific bishop having an unbreakable or unchallengeable faith, right? We would even say that as Catholics about like the saints, like, you know, Saint Mother Teresa having an unbreakable faith despite her struggling with personal darkness, right? I don't think anyone looks at that and says, oh yeah, guys, you know, someone other than Peter was referred to as having a strong faith, you know, pack it up. It's like, that's just such a dumb argument, you know?
Totally. And it comes to mind just kind of two closing thoughts, and I'll kind of get out of the way here. Like, one is sort of the typology of Moses and Aaron, where Moses is Christ and Aaron is Peter. I had never thought of that. I don't know if that's legit, but it just kind of came to mind. And then the other one is just sort of the historical context too, of like, we got to understand we're talking about Semites, Meds, guys who are super brotherly, high emotion, very smart, have a very specific cultural way of handling stuff. And that's coming out in scripture and church fathers. And so like the cultural background and way of operating that I think, especially in the West, like Anglo, and I just like, I used to be in Protestant, like N.T. Wright kind of stuff. And it's like, he gets that pretty good, I think, by comparison. But there's some people who totally treat it just like some sort of abstract exercise and miss that human element.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny too, because like, as much as they try, I don't understand, like, I've never understood how like Philip Schaff or even like J.N.D. Kelly or like, I think it's Henry Chadwick, like these really intelligent, like Anglican, or I think Philip was a Reformed Calvinist, but like how they delved into church history and somehow carved out a Protestant, like interpretation of that. Because I've found in almost every single case, you're just not going to be Protestant if you start reading church history. You just like quickly realize how like ahistorical it is and stuff like that. And yes, there are more educated, you know, Protestants and stuff like that. But I mean, at most, you're just not going to be Protestant, right? Because you're going to clearly see there's apostolic succession, there's an enduring episcopate, you know, enduring bishops and stuff like that. It's not like all that dried up and then suddenly Henry VIII started a new church and everything was flourishing again. It was the same apostolic church, right? That doesn't make any sense. And so I think there's a level of cognitive dissonance that goes on there, sort of. But yeah, man, I think those were good ending thoughts. Oh, sorry, Static wanted to talk. Also, anyone else in here who wants to throw up their hands and speak, just let me know. Static, go ahead, buddy.
I am back. Yay, finally. So I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, but I've been seeing a trend of a lot of more women are running for like Congress or House, Senate or something like that. And a lot of people are kind of frustrated, like, ugh, a bunch of women. I'm like, well, you kind of have to look at the root cause. You know, yes, women are to blame for a lot of things, but also we have a lot of weak men in America. I would say about 75 to 80% of men in America are weak, even the Christian ones. They don't want to fight. They don't want to they don't want to do anything. They're lazy. They just want to go to the bar, drink beer, and watch football. That's all they want to do. And it's kind of sad because this is why women are running and are winning, because men are just weak now. I don't know what's your take on that, but that's just my take on the political sphere being, you know, being more woman than men.
Modern man is just hands down, Static, really effeminate and gay. Like, we just don't do anything. But at the same time, to back my bros up, I want to take a balanced view of this, because I think that sometimes too many people on the right will start ragging on our boys. And it's this like weird version of simping where they're like, oh, but the girl boss women are doing what the men. And I'm like, you know, you're going a little too far the other way, man. You know, it's like, can you really blame a lot of guys for not doing that? Because it's been so rooted out of us, right? Like, for a guy, for instance, to like go and ask a girl, you know, he can get pressed with a rape accusation and then have his life ruined, right? For a guy to run for office, you know, he's going to be just harrowed and stuff like that. And he's been told his entire life, you're the oppressor, you need to tone down, you need to soften down and stuff like that. And then people complain and they're like, why aren't men doing anything? It's like, well, because you took the steam out of men. Like, that being said, I want men to do things, and I think we're rediscovering that. But it's kind of a whole chicken before the egg thing. It's like, you know, weak men did make bad times, but at the same time, this society made those same men weak by, you know, just pounding it into them to just not like love their masculinity and stuff like that. And then you're sitting here, not you, but just you in general, you know, people are sitting here wondering, oh, why don't men want to go do things? I don't know, because you've taken the sting, you've taken their passion out of even wanting to do anything. You know what I mean? I mean, if I'm so black-pilled all the time because I have, you know, a girl boss lording over me and telling me, you know, do this or do that, or I'm gonna, you know, break your balls, you know, for nothing, it kind of makes me not want to do anything. You know what I mean? So, you know, that's really why I think in order for men to really recapture that masculine urge to go and run for office and get involved again, you know, we've got to kind of like, for lack of a better term, fight club this civilization we live in. Like, we need to really be like ultra masculine and just be like, you know, just not even care, you know, not care what people think of us, not care about appealing to sensibilities and the flashy clothes and stuff like that. We just need to move on, you know?
I agree. I remember I was talking about this with Bird Enjoyer in the chat, and you brought up a good point that this all originates to low testosterone, because men now, testosterone levels are like the lowest in history.
They are.
And it's actually, and it's actually a national emergency. It's actually a national issue, in my opinion. It's one of the biggest issues that no one is talking about. You can have a based movement, but if everybody has low T and they're disgusting and they're not healthy, then might as well be you might as well be useless. And I'm not saying everyone has to be like a bodybuilder. Sorry if I'm interrupting. I'm not saying everyone needs to be a bodybuilder, but like to defend, like how do you call it? Take care of your body like it's a temple. You know, take care of your body at all costs. I'm kind of how do you call it? Struggling in that, but when things get better, I'm gonna try and put in the effort. My best friend has been eating clean and drinking good water, and he's been like great now. And it's like, it's not hard to put in the effort. It's just a lot of people don't want to because, like you said, society kind of burned them out. They don't have that desire anymore.
It's true, dude. And you know, really with the whole, you know, low T thing, I mean, I'm not a black pillar who thinks that it has to always be that way. I think you just need to get it back up by just quitting a lot of the stuff that's bringing it down, right? Like, try to cut out the vegetable oil, try to work out, you know, I mean, even having like a more masculine mindset instantly, I'm pretty sure studies have shown that even instantly like starts to increase testosterone, you know? I mean, because what you also sort of get, you get really sort of this weird, and I maybe should make a whole video on this, but like, there's this really weird, like, homosexual subculture of like the bodybuilding movement. You know what I mean? Where like people are like simping for like Noel Diesel and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, he like makes some good videos. I like him, but like this really weird like almost like Play-Doh obsession with like men and like other men in like a really like gay way. And it's not like masculine, like, oh, I admire what that man is doing and I want to do that. But it's like, wow, bro, you really got your glutes all big and juicy. It's like, dude, come on, bro. Get out of here with
trust
that.
Me, I work out and all. Back when I was younger and still new, you know, I was like, I want to be a bodybuilder. I want to be as big as these guys. And then I realized when I looked deep into it, the gym culture is filthy. It's disgusting. It's filled with drugs, alcohol, lots of sex, and
A lot of lust.
Lust and steroid abuse. The amount of drugs they use is insane. And I'm like, do I really want to go through that just to look good for a couple years and then be trash in my 50s? Like, no, that's not what I want to do. So I said, screw that. I don't even follow bodybuilding anymore. It's just so gay, cringe. A lot of them are involved in the, excuse me for my language, gay for pay thing. Even the straight dudes. They've all, there was dudes coming out saying that they were involved in it because you just had to play the game. If you wanted to win, you had to play the game. And that's a sad truth.
I mean, it's really gross, bro. And also, I'm going to have to just mute you again because Baron's been waiting a long time, but we can pick it right back up. But just to kind of end off, like, it really does turn into that. And what I think that is, for lack of a better term, what we would call safe masculinity, right? Where, you know, you permit all the like aesthetics of masculinity. And Sam Hyde had a fantastic video on this. Everyone should go watch it. But it's like, you know, you buy the lumberjack beard box and, I'm going to shave with a straight razor because that for some reason would make me more of a man than just using the easier razor or whatever. And I'm going to buy the beard kit beard box or the manly man meat pack that I have to pay a monthly subscription for or something like that. And it's like got all the trimmings of masculinity without the heart, without the soul. Because like the moment that stops being aesthetics and it starts being like the man being like, I don't want to get married and I want to go live in a monastery and like be completely devoted to God and have no interest in women, not even from like a like disdainful way, just like I want to be indifferent towards like, you know, carnal pleasure and stuff like that. It's like, what are you, an incel, and you're gay or something like that. And suddenly they start, you know, starts twisting up a little bit because that's not safe masculinity. That's not beard box, beard soy, or not beard soy. Beardson's awesome. I know RPG uses that term for Beardson's great, but you know, this soylent kind of like safe masculinity that everyone wants, right? The moment that the man starts demanding things or demands like traditional gender roles or like a society that prizes morality and virtue, that's not safe anymore. We need to put that back in the little crate, you know, lock that up and stuff like that. But hey, you can have your steak and you can go to the gym so long as, you know, your wife is sleeping with other men and stuff like that. That's okay. So it's just really disgusting and perverted. Also, Baron, I'll allow you to speak, big guy. How's it going, bro? I think you need to unmute your mic. I allowed you to speak.
I think he's still unallowed to speak. Oh.
No, he left.
Oh, I guess he left. Shoot. I wanted to hear what the big guy had to say.
All right, if he comes... Go ahead.
If he comes back, we'll unmute him, but I wanted to continue as well, what you were saying as well about that culture. Like, for example, you look at a person like Destiny. You think anyone's going to be afraid or jealous of him? No, the guy's weak. Oh, there he is. He's back.
Oh, he's back. Hey, Baron, what's up, bro?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, damn. I'm, I hate to burst your bubble, guy, but it was not too hard to see that the bodybuilding community was full of a bunch of gays.
It's honestly not a hard thing to see.
Ace Detective Static over there. I almost died of laughter when you said, "Oh man, I was shocked."
Yeah, it's pretty obvious.
You also mentioned Beardson. I was wondering if you had heard what had happened at that side of the internet tonight and very recently.
What happened? I haven't followed it. Like, I haven't followed any E-drama stuff or anything like that. What went on?
Actually, Laura Loomer just lost tonight, like just a few hours ago.
I did hear about that. That was very unfortunate.
And then Latino Zoomer, who is a big Nick Fuentes fan.
That guy, the Fed.
Oh man, that's bro. What are you doing? You're threatening to shoot up TPUSA?
Oh, bad
Like,
stuff,
are you
dude.
retarded?
I mean, that guy is just like 3 nuts corn. They're 3 nuts corn of a. I was gonna say some like old hillbilly saying. Just go ahead.
No, but one of my favorites is you mentioned he's the Fed, and he definitely did have the skull mask. And I think my favorite had to be the day it broke that Atomwaffen was a federal organization. Keith Woods put on his telegram, he said, "Damn, you mean to tell me that it was Atomwaffen who was the feds? Wow."
Oh man, dude.
But no, I've been listening. You guys have been doing. You've been giving some good speeches tonight, gentlemen.
Thanks, man.
Very glad to hop on in.
Yeah, bro. I'm so glad to have you on. I mean, great contributions too. Atomwaffen is such a funny group. And I don't mean funny like good. I mean like funny like bad, Everyone should to anyone like, watching this or whatever should go look up the like documentary that I think like ABC News or something did about them. Just so goofy, just like, 1488, brother, we're going to secure a place for the white race and stuff like that. And just doing these like goofy, Fed.
It's even worse than that. It's even worse than that. And I'll tell you why.
It's even worse than that.
Because I like the internet drama, and I like watching crazy people and schizophrenics. So these guys are right up my alley with just watching madness. So these guys would have kill your local drug dealer and stuff like that. And I have seen that from like people who have obviously very clearly lost people. But then they also have stickers that have the same thing as saying, "Cure the homeless problem, distribute fentanyl." And I'm just like, I just have no words. Like, there's nothing to even say to that.
What no Christianity does to a fella.
No, those guys were actually satanic.
Yeah.
Like that's not even hyperbole, like literally.
The whole order, the 9 divines kind of thing.
For those of you who do not know, it turns out Atomwaffen was being led by an actual CIA asset who had tried to assassinate the head of a North Korean fan club in 2003 to try and get close to North Korean leadership. Because they've got those weird left-wing commies who are like North Korea's based in Juche and all that. So this guy and his girlfriend go there and he poisoned them. And he tried shooting them, but the North Korean fan escaped. But this is the guy who is running Atomwaffen. There's just nothing to say.
Well, that's fun and weird too. Like, there's like literally 50 guys in their group, and yet they're famous. So it's like, wait, how does that happen? And I don't know. It's just weird.
Well,
listen here, brother.
Go ahead. What was that?
Oh, I was just gonna make a stupid joke. I was like, listen here, brother. If you don't ruin your life for the white race, are you really down for the cause? All right, you should be throwing yourself in jail and ruining your life. Like, that's just like the worst thing ever, man. Like, you should do illegal things because that's, definitely good. No, it ain't, don't do illegal stuff.
They became well known because of a series of murders that was nothing but their own members. One of their members converted to Islam and swore allegiance to, I think, Al Qaeda. And then he killed his 2 roommates who also were in Atomwaffen. And then a third guy unironically got a hold of nuclear materials and tried to build a bomb because he was a nuclear physicist. That's how these guys were so well known. They actually have some problems attached to them. Like, that's terrible.
That's just bad, dude. Like, that's just so,
And we think Patriot Fund is very unoptical.
Yeah. I mean, that just like takes the cake, honestly. I wanted to make a TikTok about how bad Patriot Front is. I think that'd be pretty interesting because, like, there's that clip where they're like, every soul that embraces the struggle will, persevere. And then they do this stupid, like, placing their hand on their chest and they're like, life, liberty, victory. And then I love how after someone releases the full cut where they're like, damn, son, that might be a cut. And then they're like, throwing up Romans and stuff like that and just like doing the most unoptical things. And I'm like, that's that whole group right there. That is
call
that
them unoptical because they do say that they're fascists. So
that's true.
So throwing up Romans isn't an optical for them because that's what they do. But you raised some very valid points there.
Yeah, it's just like, how are you going to relate to a normal person on the street by being like, yeah, we're fascists and we want to start a revolution and stuff like that? It's like, do you think the grandpa or grandma walking down the street that you're apparently the white grandma or grandpa walking down the street that you're trying to appeal to is going to look at that and be like, oh, honey, look, they're like the people that we fought in World War II or something like that,
Excuse me for bringing up this. Aren't they an offshoot of American Vanguard back in like the Charlottesville days?
Yeah, they are.
Yes.
Because Thomas Rousseau was a part of that.
Dude,
from my understanding, it fell up. Go ahead, Static.
Oh, sorry. The alt-right days back then, man, the content was freaking awesome. It was honestly the best. But you know what's sad, but also funny? All of them, all the big dissident right people back then, are like irrelevant. Augustus Invictus, who was a pagan, is now a Roman Catholic.
That's awesome. Blessed be God.
He's not perfect though. He's not a big fan of the Novus Ordo, but it's whatever. At least he converted.
At least he's
I did not
closer
know
to
that.
the truth.
Thank you. I'm glad that man found Jesus.
Yeah, he said going to jail kind of helped him and set his ass straight. He's a lawyer now, I think.
Oh, nice.
So he's actually always been a lawyer, and he actually fought very hard in this case because actually the FBI put the wife up to do it. Like to just openly lie about abuse, like domestic abuse, and he was able to. I haven't followed the exact details of the case. I did hear a summary, but he was acquitted, and he last I heard he sent an email to everybody involved demanding a public apology, or he's going to get litigious.
Yeah, because the old right technically threw him under the bus and they abandoned him.
Yeah,
that's what they did, hands down.
They kind of do that a lot.
This is why you don't let women in the movement. Because I remember Nick was talking about one of the women that was involved in the alt-right was a legit MI6 agent. Like a legit one.
Yeah, wasn't she like a British feminist or something that like what was his name? The something millennial?
Something like that.
Millennial, or not millennial.
Roaming millennial? Was that it?
Not roaming millennial. It was millennial woes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That guy.
Yeah. That like weird Wignat dude like was simping for, I think she was like some like British Wignat woman or something. I think she like took some picture even with like a British like swastika flag or something in 2016. I even remembered when I was like in high school seeing it and being like, oh, okay. And I just kept like scrolling or whatever.
Yeah, and then it turned out she was an MI6 agent.
I'm not surprised, dude. I mean, and of course, like Millennial Woes was going after Nick and saying like, you need, because like they all have this weird, like, I'm just going to be blunt. They all have this weird like fertility fetish. Like, you need to let women be a part of the movement because they're going to have our babies and stuff like that. I'm like, ugh, like, ew, gross. Like, I don't want to touch that, because like, I mean, if you're at all a follower of not the old alt-right, I'm not, no one here is associated with them, but I mean like the old right, like Joseph DeMast, Edmund Burke, guys like that. It's like, it was a man's movement, right? Women weren't a part of it because women were being women, right? They were doing what women were meant to do. And really sort of the like alt-right, which you know, I mean, they're so irrelevant now, they're not even really worth mentioning. But if we're looking at like the lineage of their ideas, I mean, they're not even really connected to the old right. They're more like Nietzschean, right? They're more like, you know, post, not post left, but like kind of like a post like French Revolution context of like, you know, might makes right and all that stuff. And you know, I think young men get like wrapped up in that, but it always winds up twisting in some very weird ways, right? Like Nietzsche died of syphilis because he like slept with a bunch of random prostitutes. And I think that's a pretty good like reflection of what winds up like essentially like happening to a lot of these guys is like they'll like simp for these women and stuff like that and be like, they need to be a part of the movement. Why? They're not doing anything. Like, I mean, they don't make particularly like interesting like podcasts or something like that. They don't say anything particularly insightful. The most you could maybe ever say is like when Lauren Southern was doing those old like, you know, those old documentaries that I'll admit, like, I mean, some of her content back then, you know, kind of red pilled me and stuff like that. Like I liked her like libertarian video when I was still kind of pretty blue pilled on it, but like, you know, you can't settle on it. And even she like flip-flopped a bunch and gave up her positions and said, oh, I'm not really right wing anymore. And then like, you know, me and Spexo talked about Ashton Birdie and how she's now like ANCAP and says that politics are a cult and stuff like that. And so like,
wait, Ashton Birdie's an ANCAP?
Yeah, apparently she is. I think Oth was showing me some stuff about that and it was pretty recent.
Wow.
I wouldn't disbelieve it though. Maybe I might be wrong, but I wouldn't disbelieve it because, I mean, like that's all her content is, right? And this is how, you know, I mean, this is just how women operate because women are not conflict centered, right? Women don't like conflict. Even the most contentious women don't like conflict. Men do. Men, we fight and we butt heads and we, you know, it's this guy versus that guy and we're engaged in a struggle. And women just constantly seek compromise. And that's not a good thing. That's not how you do politics, and especially like strong right-wing politics, right? Otherwise you're just going to fall into the same trap of just, you know, making concessions to the left that eventually water down your ideas so much you're just a soft left-wing party, like what has happened in the Republican Party, right?
Like, for example, where are all the people in the alt-right at now? Richard Spencer is a NATO Ukraine shill. Liberal now. Mike Enoch is an NJP with a alcoholic coke addict, and I've heard videos of people that used to be involved with him saying, "Oh yeah, Mike Enoch and his friends, they do coke all the time in the parties. They've all done coke."
like that.
Yeah, so it's like, What happened?
Yeah, I mean,
I said with a nose like that.
Yeah,
'cause Mike's not Jewish, but he's got a giant schnoz.
exactly. But anyways,
yeah,
go ahead.
Is he Italian? Is that why he has a big nose?
Yeah, he's Italian.
That makes sense.
He's like Italian Polish, I think, because his last name's Painovich.
Oh, gotcha. Nothing against Italians or any racial group. I was just saying that like in general because I know a lot of Italians have like kind of a bigger nose build or what have you. Family Guy even made that joke where they're like. Like Brian makes the joke about them like being Jewish or something, and then like the two guys turn and they have these long noses and they're like, "Oh no, we're Italian." And I was like what?
That show hits gold sometimes. It's rare, but it's funny.
Yeah, that show has some gold moments. It is rare though. But getting back on topic, yeah, Static, you're right. Like, I mean, honestly, just following these guys will ruin your life. And I mean, what have they done that has substantially benefited any of the target demographics or groups that they apparently are trying to save, right?
Nothing.
Is getting young, impressionable white young men, getting them thrown in jail and having their life ruined, improving the white race? Is it rebuilding America to be, you know, Fed posting? Or the opposite, being like, there's no political solution, so we're going to sit on a podcast all day and just talk about our woes. Is that doing anything?
Okay, but those guys were the best. Okay, those were like white hoteps. the people who were like The day of the rope is coming any day now.
Oh gosh, I
There
remember.
were a few
okay.
of them on the
Uh,
those
I
people.
wouldn't say that.
There were a few of them on the early days of YouTube live streaming. And
Oh,
it
I remember
became
those days.
and it eventually devolved into a 6-hour scream fest where the cops were called live. And like people were getting swatted in the middle of it. It was those people are violent morons, and they only exist
They
on
are.
Telegram now.
I feel like the internet, in this part of the internet, like Telegram and stuff, I feel like it breaks people mentally. Like, I honestly believe it just breaks people and it makes them go, like RPG, for example. I honestly think he's clinically insane. I actually worry for him because I'm afraid he's going to do something very stupid one day, especially
Who is
how he
this?
talks.
Red
Very,
Pilled Gaming.
yeah.
Oh, that
He's like,
guy.
yeah. No, don't lie. He looks like a clinically insane person.
He does.
What's the deal with him? He's been popping up in memes and whatever. I don't get what.
He's just talking. He's a drama.
I can
He's a
tell you the
drama.
story, Mike, if you want to hear.
Yes,
Static,
go
you
for
want
it.
me to tell the story about RPG?
Go for it. I mean, I know a lot
Oh,
about it
please,
already, but Mike
please. I
Fan
want the
doesn't.
deepest lore.
Yeah, so RPG was essentially the way that, now I'm not always super deep into AF lore. Sometimes I have to ask the other guys like, hey, what happened this week? And they're like, Pinesap, you haven't followed up. I'm like, no, dude, I'm on the internet way too much already. But essentially what happened with RPG, I think this was actually way before like me and Spexo had our show, and I was doing streaming with him and stuff like that, and kind of like a couple months before. But he got really mad at Beardson because Beardson appeared in the Louis Theroux documentary. And he claimed he had two contentions with Beardson. One was the Louis Theroux documentary. The other was like him just counter signaling all other AF people for listening to rap and like buying like pit vipers. And he's like, you shouldn't support these things that are against us or whatever. And I'm like, my whole take on it at the time was, I can't remember my take and stuff like that. I've kind of like flip-flopped like kind of in the past, and I now have a more stable take. My whole thing was like, I was never really a rap fan, so I didn't have any marriage to it. But I was like, why are you just kind of counter signaling? Like, how is it hurting anything if people are just listening to rap? And you being this contentious too. Oh, Baron, are you cool if I mute you, big guy, just since there's some background noise?
Oh, my bad, mate. Sorry, I was moving something.
Oh, that's all good, bro. No issue.
I'll mute myself. Just give me 1 second.
You got it. Totally take your time.
My bad, Chief.
All good, G. Yeah, so, really what happened was he was counter signaling AF people about listening to rap and buying pit vipers and stuff like that. Probably some other stuff. But that seemed to be like the two main things. And then the whole Louis Theroux documentary. And all his concern trolling about the Louis Theroux documentary was instantly decimated. It came out. Like the moment it came out, there were even non-AF, non-right-wing, left-wing people being like, oh, this documentary actually like makes AF like look cool and like they're like good guys and like normal and wholesome and like approachable and stuff like that. And it made Louis look like a total doofus, right? And so like Beardson and Nick and all the guys who did that were totally vindicated on like participating. It was really good, actually. It was really positive coverage. And, I don't know what RPG's reaction was to it, but I'm sure he just stayed ensconced or entrenched in his position, right? And then, the whole like rap thing and all that, I mean, everyone just kind of saw it as like needless counter signaling. They were just like, why are you engaging in this counter signaling? Why do you feel the need to keep, going off about this issue or whatever? And, he just got like crazy. And then it eventually got to the point where Nick was like, I can't remember everything that Nick said, but essentially I think it was something along the lines of like, you're not relevant. Like you play video games and that's about it. And that's all anyone really knew him for. Right. And, I thought he was going to be originally kind of an up and coming like AF guy who's going to have his own little like thing that he was doing, because every AF person kind of has like a different thing that they do. Right. not necessarily that there's some like general or something, but just, someone who's a supporter of AF and people identify them with like the brand or the content. Like everyone like either plays games or does something with music or art or, theology or something like that. And they're kind of delineated as such. And I thought he was going to be like a gamer. But he like really destroyed any momentum that he would have otherwise had in AF by just being like really strong into counter signaling and making just these awful points that nobody cared about except him. And since then, Nick basically just threw the gauntlet down and said, like, get out, like you're not contributing or anything like that. And he went off the rails. He just became super obsessed with AF. It was like every opportunity he could get, he would like clip streams. He would, send clips and do this and do that. And like, oh, this person and that person. He was like texting Kai and saying that like, you realize like you're just a lackey to Nick and stuff like that. And just all this stupid crap. And I'm like, dude, you need to move on. You need to like, grow up and stuff like that. Also, I got to get off after the story. It's dinner time. But, it's like you just need to grow up and move the hell on, right, with your life and stuff like that. And he's just become such a seether that's his only content is being anti-AF. And so really he's just become kind of a meme to everyone. I think as Static said, I think he really is kind of insane. Like I could not see someone opining their interest on one particular person for this long without having something kind of wrong up here. And that just seems to be his whole shtick now. So, I don't know whether to feel bad for him or not. I guess I pity him in some sense, but I mean, at the same time, it's kind of like a self-inflicted wound. It's not like anyone really did anything to him. He just, has chosen to act this way. So it's unfortunate,
There is a strange set of the internet that hyperfixates on. Now, I do like these guys. They do produce funny content, but like, it's the people who fuck with Ethan Ralph and Nick Fuentes and them, because they have had some pretty funny things. Specifically against Ethan Ralph, that sex tape review was one of the funniest commentaries I've ever seen. But that being said, there is some very clear autism when you're obsessing over a man for literal years. In the case of like PPP and Andy Worski.
It's just weird, man. And I don't really get it. Oh shoot, Allie joined right as I have to go. Damn it. I'll stream probably tomorrow or something too. But
what's the channel? I think I accidentally subscribed to you and then I just saw some good content and I saw you were live. What's the channel you got?
Oh, I might upload this to YouTube. This might have just been a nice test stream just for us to all talk or something. But this was just a hangout, just the narrow way. This is the only place it's been streamed right now. But I might upload the footage to YouTube or something. You guys can even let me know, like on the chat we have and all that. But yeah, I gotta get going, guys. But let me see if I can do another stream pretty soon. I'd love to do this again. I loved getting to test out the new mic. So God bless you, gentlemen.
These are fun.
Have a good night, sir.
God bless.
Good night, sir.
Enjoy your 12 a.m. dinner.
Thanks, Mike.